Good evening. I'm Lisa Phillips, the director of the new museum. And I just want to start with a land acknowledgement to recognize that the museum sits on unceded land of the Lenape people, the original inhabitants of Manhattan. And the Bowery, in fact, was a Lenape trail when the Dutch arrived. So as we gather here tonight, we want to begin by paying respects to the Lenape past, present, and future. Okay, tonight, we're very proud to present this year's Visionary event honoring the award-winning filmmaker, writer, and activist, Dream Hampton. And we have a really special evening planned. She is going to be joined in conversation by choreographer, curator, and writer Rashida Bumbray. And the culinary entrepreneur, Jon Gray. The Stuart Regan Visionary Series is a signature program of the new museum, recognizing individuals who've made a major contribution in art and culture and who are actively imagining a better future. We are so grateful to Barbara Gladstone for making this Visionary Series possible over many years. Thank you, Barbara. So I'm going to do a couple short biographies here. Dream Hampton, as you all know, is an award-winning filmmaker and writer from Detroit. And many people from Detroit here tonight, whose essays and cultural criticism have helped shape a generation. Her most recent works include the award-winning short film Freshwater, which was a New York Times OpDoc and PBS film, Ladies First, and Treasure, Finding Justice. It's a Hard Truth, Ain't It? And of course, the Emmy-nominated Surviving R. Kelly, which broke ratings records and earned her a Peabody Award. In 2019, Hampton was named one of Time's 100 most influential people in the world. We know that. Dream is known to many of us who had the privilege of working with her on Idea City, Detroit, and New Orleans, where she was a featured keynote speaker. Yes, in Athens too, that's right. So yes, Rashida Bumbray is a curator and choreographer. In 2022, she organized the amazing Loophole of Retreat convening in Venice as part of Simone Lee's American Pavilion exhibition. Before that, she was director of culture and art at the Open Society Foundation, a guest curator at Creative Time at the Kitchen, and curatorial assistant at an exhibition coordinator at the Studio Museum in Harlem. Yes. And then Jon Gray is the co-founder of Ghetto Gastro, a Bronx-based culinary collective that blends food, fashion, and activism. And he aims to change social narratives through culinary experiences and unique storytelling. He's given a TED Talk. He's served as artist in residence at the Metropolitan Museum and was a guest curator at the Cooper Hewitt Design Museum and also participated in Idea City. Yes. So we all met through that program, and I do also want to shout out to Karen Wong, who's here tonight, and thank her for introducing us all. And now Jon Gray is going to give a short tribute to Dream before we start the conversation.
Can I get a year? And I told Dream I was going to be freestyling up here. She said, keep it PG. I told her I can't promise her that. So the moment I fell in love with Dream, shout out to Karen Wong, was at Idea City, Detroit when she was giving her keynote. And like probably a lot of you hear the legend of Dream about the work and the things she's done and the people she's known and the culture and the impact that she's made. But when she got on that stage and delivered her keynote, and a picture of the then CEO and founder of Little Caesars, Pizza hit the screen, and she was like, a lot of people might think when they see a picture of a welfare queen, it's like a black woman in the projects with a bonnet on, but it's really this guy because he's getting funded by the government to build basketball arenas and neighborhoods and whatnot. So it was just the bravery. It was that bravery, the sarcasm, the comedic timing that she was able to expertly deliver in space she made when she gave the speech that I was just like flabbergasted because it's like Karen invited me to Idea City, Detroit, and Karen was like the first person I think to recognize like the practice and what we did is get at Ghetto Gastro as like a artistic practice and not just a cool thing that of doing house parties at our crib. So I really appreciate her making a space. So that's the beginning of our story. Then she hosted a dinner. I seen how she a brunch actually. I saw she had some fly wallpaper, some good furniture. She had a Mickalene Thomas print. Shout out to Mickalene in the audience. I'm like, all right, this is my people. She introduced me to Ed Clark, and that work. So I'm like, all right, I really mess with this woman. I'll tell you, I'm gonna try to keep it PG, and my mouth is like a sewer. So bear with me. And then another story that made me fall deeper in love because one thing about me, like, it was crazy that Idea City connected that way because Dream was also a longtime friend. I feel like you knew Bar in '88, like. So my man Bar's in the audience. He's my big bro. And when he saw I met Dream on the gram, this is early gram too, this is like 2014. He's like, yo, you met Dream? That's crazy. Da-da-da-da. That's like someone I deeply respect. And I met Bar in 2006. So in a past life, I was facing 10 years in year. I was facing 10 years in jail, and I was out on bail, and I was trying to sell T-shirts. And Bar had a store in East Harlem on 2nd Avenue, right by Patsy's, or it might have been First Avenue, right next to Patsy's, and it was called Everything Must Go. So he's super ahead of his time, and I went up there, and I'm still like, I'm fresh out the trap. I'm like trying to figure it out. I was going to FIT, so I had a little polish. And I went up there and I seen it and I'm like, yo, I got these T-shirts. My man Luke, who sells these other shirts, Felony Ring, said, pull up. I'm from the BX, And Bar could be stone-faced, so he was like, yeah, all right, cool, whatever, da-da-da-da. But long story short, he took me under the wing and we've been rocking ever since. So for us to connect that way was amazing. When I heard that, I'm like, okay, so you that type of friend. You the type of friend, because sometimes you got to put it in categories. You got your friends that you could go to the museum with. You got, especially when we're multitudes, and I feel like I'm an individual that has a lot of sides. You got friends that you go to the TED conference with. You got friends that you go to the omakase with. You know what I'm saying? You got friends that you go to the gentleman's club with. You got friends that you know what I mean, gonna go rob a bank with. And I think the beauty about Dream, and I could also just do some really, could critique some stuff and let you know if your thing is whack or if it's hot or whatever. So I feel truly blessed to be able to experience Dream in this lifetime and have someone in my life that I could experience the fullness of all my interests with. And Dream coined a term called food top, right? So a food top is someone that like if y'all know Dream, she's a Virgo. She's like, it's gonna be what it got to be, and like she's calling shots with the bosses. And I think I'm like a strong, sturdy dude, but she'd be like, nah, y'all was too loud at the Wagyu spot in Tokyo. Have some decorum. I'm like, all right, chill. Like they know what to expect when we coming through. So boom though. So I say that to say this. I lost my train. My train got hijacked, but it's a blessing, you know. And shout out to Dream, and then to be here with Rashida, who paved the way at the Met for someone like me to pull up after and do things a little bit differently. So yeah, I think we're just gonna have fun. We're gonna talk shit, swallow spit, and here we go. Yeah.
Jon Gray from the BX. Rashida, thank you for coming.
Well, I'm so honored to be here, and I can't give a tribute on this level, but I did want to just acknowledge the work that Dream has done to pave the way for so many of us, and some of the work I'm still learning about. But you know, her work means so much to me, and it means so much to all of us. And you know, you worked in so many overlapping fields, right? That we've all worked in, whether it's all of us have worked in probably one of those, but you worked in all of them. In terms of journalism and cultural criticism, film and media, art and activism. Um, and, you know, I think the thing that stands out most to me about you, Dream, is that you are disobedient. So and I know we said we're going to edit, but you are a Black woman doing what the fuck you want to do. And I think, you know, it's such a important thing to say out loud because, you know, we all know that you're self-possessed and you're one of the smartest people we've ever spoken to. But I think that the way you do things is what makes what you do so special. And it's really about this disobedience and about your fearlessness.
Thank you.
Yeah. And
it's hard to be honored, y'all. I don't know if y'all.
I know.
It's easier to be hated on. Does anyone want to send out a tweet? Anyone want to send out a tweet about how I'm trash or something just to balance the day?
Well, you know, I was just thinking about this because, you know, I read that article about Tupac, of course. But some of the things that I did when I first moved to New York, like going to Black August shows, and you know, with MXGM, we have some.
And they're in the house. Malika, Nyoka, Lumumba, Monifa, Chantrell, MXG is in the house right now.
And then I also just learned yesterday or the day before, you told me that when you were a film student at NYU, you protested to create the Africana Studies program, which I moved to New York to go to that program. So, you know, you've just really done so many things that some of those things are really quiet. Some of them are louder. But, you know, it's just really important to say this. And
can I say something about the NYU?
Yes.
Because I couldn't afford to go to do my 101 classes at NYU. So I went to Wayne State University in the heart of Detroit for my 101 classes. And so, yeah, there was this movement to create an Africana Studies department. We took over the admin building for like 8 days. My mom, who's in the audience today, brought us snacks down to the where we were sleeping in the admin building demanding Africana Studies. The great linguist Geneva Smitherman was our like faculty ally. And if you know Geneva Smitherman, anyone who's in the academy, you know that she could be anywhere in the world, and she chose to stay in Detroit. And so then, yeah, when I came to NYU, I was like, why y'all ain't got no Africana Studies department? And yeah, we did this protest. It's a really, like, when I think of it now, we took all the books down at Bobst from the library. I was like, poor librarians, but it was like, no one's gonna work, it's a stoppage until we get an Africana Studies department. And so then they invited me I was the undergrad representative who brought on Monthia Dior, yes. So that, it's not any bio or anything, but it was a part of my undergrad life at NYU. Yeah.
And the first person I heard call you just Dream by your first name was Greg Tate. And he would always talk about you as though everyone just needs to know who Dream is and why she's important. So I just wanted to raise his name up in this conversation too.
Yeah. Yes, Greg Tate. No, I'm not. It's hard to be in New York City without Greg Tate here. He's here. He's in our hearts and he's everywhere. I love that mural in Brooklyn. But the East Village is Tate to me. Harlem is Tate to me. New York is Tate to me. And yeah, this whole thing could be about Tate. Me and Joan just did something at Elizabeth Mendez-Berry Rashid Shabazz, your husband's wonderful gathering, Critical Minded. So we did a whole tribute to Tate. But yeah, Tate walked me into the Village Voice. I had written something at The Source. The very first thing, I was a photo editor at The Source, and Dr. Dre assaulted D. Barnes, and I wrote an editorial calling him a bitch. And Greg and Joan introduced themselves to me at a conference, and Greg and I were just, that was my soulmate friend, we must have spent, closest thing I've had to a husband, like a daily practice of friendship, seeing someone every day for 20 years. And so I miss Greg every day. Yeah, Ashe.
I want to ask you, because I think I asked a lot of people, what should I ask Dream? And I think Simone had the best question, which was, what gives you your fearlessness? And I think we asked that question because you have done a lot of work that has added precarity to your own life, right? That has meant that you had to put yourself on the front lines, really to step into a space and say that Black women and girls deserve to be safe. And you've done that in all of your work, right? You've done it. I can't even say that I know that you've enjoyed all the projects that you've done, but you've done them because they needed to be done, and so that's a specific thing. And I just wanted to ask if you could say if there's anything, in your own lineage, in your own kind of like intellectual lineage, that makes you that fearless.
Yeah. Well, first, Rashida, thank you. Sometimes when we have artists, like great artists like Rashida, Rashida is also a multi-hyphenate curator, has her own practice as an artist. Yes. World-class gatherer. Lupo is still one of the best things I've ever been to. And so sometimes when we see people like you at a foundation, we're like, what are you doing there? Like you should, but then Rashida was able, when the R. Kelly thing happened, my address was leaked online and I had to get out of a house that I really loved in Santa Monica. John came and posted up at the house just to let folks know. But Rashida, quickly made an emergency grant with the help of with my, supportive best friends, Monifa and Invincible from Detroit, to create a quick grant to help me to get safe and to move out. And so that's obviously not the only reason you were at that institution, but like that you were placed in there and able to do that was like, just alhamdulillah, thank you. Fearlessness, if you have a child, if you've been raising someone since they were a little human, then we kind of come how we are, like Nina is evidence to me that like I shouldn't even try to be all nicey pants. Like it's never gonna be for me, you know what I mean? Because she came here so super kind, and I was like, well, fuck it. Like I'm never like, because before she could talk, she was just kind. And I was like, oh, you come like that. Like, because every year at New Year's, I'm like, I'm going to try to be nicer. And
but I just want to interject. You're kind. I think kindness and niceness are different things.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, okay, that's true. Yeah, because nice people, they'll be like, I'm parked, I can't take you to the airport, whatever. Or like
Dream is gonna be like, but you gonna take my friend to the airport, yes. Even if you live on the east side and they on the west side. That's yes. Dream.
But anyway, so I think that I'm from Detroit, so there's that, right? Like, and I'm from Detroit in the 70s and 80s. So I was just talking to someone, I was like, they had an Aries. And I was like, I think the last 3 fights I've been in with Aries, right? Like fist fights, right? And they were like, I think they thought I meant back in the day. I'm like, oh no, no, no. I was like Dream Hampton, like fighting chicks in Target and shit. So I don't she threw my change at me and I blacked out. I and I didn't even know she was Aries until we were in court. And I was like, oh my God, of course. Like, anyway, so I don't know what like the consequences could be. You know, I guess it could be death or something else, but none of it is as bad as silence or as like a lack of justice, you know, or letting an injustice stand. And then, you know, early on, I fell in love with Malcolm. Again, Detroit, like we had this bookstore that used to sell his tapes in the 80s. And so, and of course, his most important speeches were made in Detroit, The Ballad or the Bullet, yes, being one of them, and Message to the Grassroots, both in Detroit. And, you know, Malcolm was fearless, you know, and Malcolm said the thing. He said it when it cost him everything. It cost him his friendships, you know. Asha Bandele provided me with a really great framework. She said that, I think it was a poem, or she was just speaking one day at an event. I think it was something Lumumba was doing at Medgar Evers, and she said that Malcolm died protecting or speaking out for Black girls. And I hadn't thought about that framework, you know, that it was, you know, this is a man that he considered a god, well, a mentor. He, you know, like in Detroit, where Temple Number 1 was, we were also always raised to call him Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And when Malcolm, you know, saw that there was exploitation happening, he spoke out. And that literally cost him his life. You know, Muhammad Ali stopped speaking to him. You know, so I just think about, I mean, I just love Malcolm, you know, and in the real way, like you know, I think about like that kind of legacy, like what it is we take from a person, and that's what I take from. I love his humor, I love his honesty, I love his bravery, right? And I was thinking about, like, you know, back to Tupac, I was thinking about how you can take different things from someone. Like, instead of Tupac's like political legacy, what most people are taking is that kind of flagrant, like, you know, you got sickle cell or whatever he was saying, you know, prodigy, or what he said about Big. Like, that's like 50 kind of extended that. Like, it really was like the worst of Pac, you know what I'm saying? And I've been thinking a lot about, like, there are all facets, different facets to all of us, right? And what like ends up being like extended in your legacy. And I think that's unfortunate with Pac, like that instead of like hip hop taking this kind of political and fearless side of Pac, they took like the kind of worst. And that's where we are right now. I'm sorry for going on that little rant, but you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I wanted to also ask you, because you know I met you as a writer. You know, I met your work as a writer. But you came to New York to make films. And you know, you've made so many films, so many projects. And I just was so fascinated last night when you were talking about your film lineage of, like, you know, Jean-Luc Godard and The Red Balloon. And, you know, if you could just talk a little bit about the films that you love and why you make the films that you make.
Yeah. Again, I don't know if you remember this, Mom, but in 11th grade, I made a call to a film school in Kyoto, back when long distance calls used to cost and international calls were crazy. They had to put me on hold for 10 minutes to find someone who spoke English. I don't know if it was Oshima. I forgot who I was obsessed with back then. Probably Kurosawa. Red Balloon is, you know, the silent short film, half-hour film. When I in Detroit on Inclement Days, they would show that as the recess film, and all the kids would be running around, and I was just captivated by it. I used to keep a scrapbook. This is so meta Virgo, but it was like we had a film critic in Detroit, and I would clip out her writings and then I would review her reviews. I was like, okay, she thinks Nicolas Cage was the best thing about Moonlighting, but clearly she should focus on Cher. And you know what I mean? Like it was like reviewing the review, right? I was one of those pretentious kids, who was going like to Godard films at the Detroit Film Theater, which is in the DIA, and I just never wanted to be anything but a filmmaker. NYU was prohibitively expensive, and I also didn't have the reel that it took to become a UGF TV student, like a production student. So I wrote an essay about Oscar Michaud. And his influence, and that's how I got into NYU, and then I became a double major, UGF TV. But you know, when I arrived in New York City in 1990, I already knew Monifa Bandele, and we had met in Atlanta. I lived there for a year, also, like kind of gap year, and you know, police terror was like, so the activism starts then too. I mean, I don't, living in an all Black city, we have class issues. Obviously, there's always going to be patriarchy and questions of gender violence. And I'm not saying that our police weren't awful, but it was a different context. So I was really shocked to come here and encounter the NYPD and the level of terror that was in these streets. And so a few of us were founding members of the Malcolm X Grassroots New York chapter. And so when I think back to those early 90s, I know that people think about like the writing, or, you know, if you knew I was in film school, like I was doing that. But it was really like working with these cadre of folks in Malcolm X Grassroots movements, and then our mentors, you know, old Black Liberation Army folk, not old, I mean, they were younger than I am now, but our mentors, Ahmed Obafemi being chief among them, who, you know, tasked us, you know, with doing programs like, you know Your Rights and Cop Watch, where we would check out my camera from NYU. This is back when, you know, cameras weighed 12, 14 pounds, and follow the cops around at 2 a.m. Jabril Touré led a lot of that work with our organization. And then going up into the projects in Fort Greene and the different things to do the Know Your Rights trainings. And then later, Asada Shakur, folks went down for the World Youth Conference. I didn't go that year, but tasked us with, you know, she thought hip hop was revolutionary. It wasn't even back then, but you know, tasked us with like using that medium to raise awareness about political prisoners. Because if you've had the honor of knowing Asada, or even, you know that she doesn't want to talk about herself. Back then, she wanted to talk about Sundiata Akoli, her co-defendant who was still in jail, about the other political prisoners who were still in jail. And so she really wanted us to raise awareness and funds for their defense campaigns. And so that's when we started doing Black August. And the people who came through Black August are the folks, if you ever went to the concerts, you know, that was Mos Def and Talib Kweli and Dead Prez and Badu and Jon Gray. You know, it was a really important moment, you know, but it was really always about the political prisoners. So that organizing, when I think of my own life in the early 90s, and it also, I didn't graduate on time. I didn't graduate at all from NYU, but I was there for 5-6 years because I kept like doing things that weren't school. But yeah.
I can relate to that.
And I should say that, you know, MXG, one of our members, successfully sued the city of New York to end stop and frisk. So when Bloomberg, they saw, so yeah.
Well, I wanted to also ask you just about the way that you build community.
Yeah,
'Cause
and I want
think-
to talk to you about that with Loophole.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, you know, one of the things that was remarkable, and we were talking about this last night at the, I'm fancy. I've been going to the Biennale every other year for the past 20 years. And, the U.S. Pavilion, we've had a couple of Black artists. We've had, Mark Bradford, we had Priya. And then when Simone Lee, when it was her time to have the pavilion, she opened it up. I mean, people, I remember when AJ won the Golden Lion and, Greg, and, you invite your people. And, this isn't to diss Bradford or Priya. They could have been introverts or shy or whatever. But when Simone Lee gets the U.S. Pavilion, she makes it about so much more than herself. She and Rashida create Loophole, a retreat, and brought all of these Black women, artists, scholars, lovers of art, the people who love Black women and art, and we just took over Venice. I had never seen anything like that after going to Venice for 20 years. I think that Venice is kind of what people want Paris to be. I really like Venice. I hope it doesn't sink, but it kind of is. It's so funny when you tell Venetians, it's sinking. They're like, oh no, the water's just rising. I'm like, okay, I know, but yeah. And so like the gathering that and the space that you created for us, and it was, I still, anyone who raise your hand if you were at Loophole or Retreat? Yes. I mean, just forever changed by that. Thank you for that. So tell me why you wanted to do that and why it was important for you and Simone. Yeah.
Sure. Well, Simone, when she had the show at the Guggenheim in 2019, she did the first Loophole of Retreat, and it was one day. There were 12 speakers. And it was really just about the fact that someone, or Sadia Hartman, told her, people don't know that a Black woman intellectual is a thing. Like, people don't know that we exist. And Simone said, my work is only possible because of the scholarship of Black women. So we need to make this visible. And so for Loophole of Retreat, this idea of Simone being the first Black woman artist to go to Venice was such a huge deal. And Simone said, but what is invisible is the fact that when I moved to New York in the early 90s, there were Black women artists who had worked their whole lives as artists and never had a museum show, right? Never had any of these things. They weren't even making art with the idea or the concept of making any money. But they were artists. They were career artists. They lived their lives as artists. They mentored other artists. And so it was really also about making that lineage visible, right? Like, she shows up as the first, but it's because all of those people did the work that they did. And so the function of Loophole of Retreat was to do that, right? It was to not wait for an invitation, again, in the spirit of how you work, not to wait for an invitation for Black women intellectuals to have the platforms that they rightfully deserve, but to create that platform. And, we really wanted to do 3 whole days because we realized if people are coming all the way to Venice, and we realized also that every woman that was in that room could have been a speaker, right? Or a performer or an interlocutor talking about the films.
We talked about that last night.
Yeah. And so it was really for us a way to create the community that we have, but maybe it's invisible, right? Those connections, but to make that happen in real time so that people could see each other, could talk to each other, because all of our work is not only interconnected, but it creates a possibility for all of our work. Like, you starting Africana Studies allows me to come to New York, where I end up getting a job at the Studio Museum, studying with Matia and AJ, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's just making that kind of labor visible and hoping that it encourages only more of that.
You just mentioned AJ. I think we didn't show any clips.
Yes.
Yeah. But shout out also to Bob Alata, and Sandra Jackson Dumont, who helped me at the last minute to do that reception for y'all at the Guggenheim.
Well, that's what I was also going to say. I said, Dream, everyone's coming, like my friends, my family.
Yeah.
We don't have a party. And Dream was like, okay, I'll do it. I'm doing it at the Guggenheim.
Yes. Yes,
and
Peggy Guggenheim.
Bob and Darnell and Sandra and made this really glamorous, gorgeous party in Venice.
It was amazing. I can't wait to go back this year. Joan Morgan and Deb Willis and the whole Black Portraiture crew is doing a thing. And then Jana Kamfra is being honored, who I met one night in Greece with Karen Wong. And I'm so excited for that. So you were telling me that, and you know AJ too, but so AJ would be the other half of Greg Tate. And Arthur Jafa was honored here as a visionary a couple of years ago. And you were telling me that you took a class with AJ.
I took a class. It was so outrageous and great. The class was called Black Documentary, and it was completely just whatever AJ wanted it to be. So the first day of the class, I keep forgetting we have children in the audience. The first day of the class, he showed us a clip of Marvin Gaye and then a clip of Eric Sermon sampling Marvin Gaye. And then he said, the reason why Marvin Gaye you can feel sex when you listen to his music is because he would masturbate in the studio. And we were just like, what class are we in? Like, what is going on, And that was the starting point. So the class just got crazier and crazier. But, it was also incredible because he was like, okay, we're going to make films in this class. None of us had ever made a film. We're going to talk about theory. We're going to watch films. So we watched everything. And, he would just set up scenarios for us. Like he invited his friend who's a Black Buddhist to sit in Washington Square Park, and then we would shoot, just, roam around her and he would tell us how we were lazy because we didn't get on the ground to get the shot. And
he would get fired today, yeah. That's another part, the question about film and who I was thinking about film back then, it was AJ. And so we have a couple clips. And so I think we should do, Derek, are you back there? Yeah, okay. I think we should do back to back because at Loophole, I showed Freshwater. Mm-hmm. So we were going to we just have small clips. But before that, the first thing I did out of film school was a short film called I Am Ali that Arthur Jafa shot. Greg Tate I was looking for the lead in that. Just quickly, because the clip I'm going to show is from the end of the film. It's about someone who has schizoaffective disorder and thinks he's Muhammad Ali. And I knew a couple of people at the time who were suffering from that. And one of them was arrested in the Bronx on Grand Concourse in his underwear in February for telling this woman who was stopped at the light that her Honda was his, and that Jesus had told him that. And I was like, why do people always think they're like Jesus? Why don't they think they're like their landlord or their uncle, right? And so I was like, who's Jesus for us? And it's Muhammad Ali. And so this is a film about really a woman played by Ingenue Ellis. Ingenue. And she was not a new actor at the time, but Greg Tate, introduced me to her. And she plays his partner, and she's trying to decide whether, if you have someone with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder in your life, that the real challenge is to be present and to stay there to support them. And she has to make a decision whether or not she's going to stay in that relationship. So we'll show a clip from that. And then we have a clip from Freshwater, which I showed at Loophole. And so we'll just start those now. And then we have one at the end. I'm not directing shit.
Virgo energy, she can't help it.
Baby, you was right. He's too old, all right? He's too old. He ain't too old to get up after that 8. See? Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier was good. Jared Quarry hit Joe Frazier in the face 43 times in the first 3 rounds. Jared Quarry didn't go for 3 rounds with me. Pretty. I'm coming out, man. Woo! I'm ready for me. Stop. Oh, I'm so great. Sonny Liston, the man's personal trainer, his trainer's tactics is dirty, had liniment on his gloves. My eyes were stinging, they still stinging. But I'm a bad man. I shook up. Oh, I'm so great. And what make it so good, they can't call it a fix. I didn't stop the fight. The doctors had to stop it. All these hypocrites. Oh, I'm so pretty. I shook up the world. I'm through talking. I'm through talking. Now you write the results.
That was Ishmael Butler from Shabazz Palaces, Digwa Planets, also a great actor.
Like most people, I have an existential dread when it comes to thinking about climate. I think about what it would look like if Detroit suddenly became home to a bunch of climate refugees. If Michigan is a safe place and we had all the fresh water.
So yeah, that was Freshwater. Yeah. That lyric was about me, by the way. Pink Gators, my Detroit Players. So I named my production company Pink Gators.
Okay, so Dream was talking earlier about how she's not nice and kind and all that, but she is definitely the host with the most, and the Virgo host at that. So she gonna micromanage how the lamb is cooked. She gonna make sure the waffles and the eggs is fluffy. I just thought about a quote that my pimp uncle gave me one time about fluffy eggs. But PG, I'm gonna keep it. But can you talk a little bit about the importance of gathering and like space making and convening and what that means to you and why it's so important?
I want you to talk about it too. Yeah. Well, I know curators hate when everybody's like, "You're a curator of this." Like, no, I went to fucking school. I'm an actual curator.
We lost that battle.
I know, right? Yeah. We lost it. Okay. Words don't mean anything anymore, right?
It's like couture, juicy curators anonymous.
I have also some sisters from Oyal's Element in the room. Crystal Whaley, Kieran and Mayo, Ray, yes, sisterhood. So I brought that up because also making our way as Black women here in the early 90s, many of us, like a lot of you, like you come to New York because you're the Black sheep in your family, you're the queer one, you're the artist, you have dreams, you've always had dreams of being in this city, and you often leave your family to do so, and then this is a little sad because in your 20s, your friends are like your family. Like you really, and that kind of extends into your 30s. And then in the 40s, you're like, oh shit, my family is my family again. Like, but that's fine. And so, yeah, I remember having like a graduation party for our sister Alita. And that kind of grew into this. We named a sisterhood after Oya, the goddess of wind and change, and a lot of other good things. And I mean, I don't know. I love. You know what I was thinking about, like, and I don't want to be this person, but like sometimes people are too controlling. They can't be at other people's things, right? And so I never want to be that person. But I do love to have people over. I love conversation more than almost anything. Like, I'm happy when clubs were done, like when they started charging $600 for vodka or whatever, and we all said, fuck that, right? I was happy that it became like more about dinner and conversations. You know that one of my complaints is like playing
hip hop in a restaurant.
I can't stand that, right? So in general, like I'm on this mission.
Tell them why though, you gotta break it down. You gotta give them the science.
It's just too noisy. I'm like, I've become that old person. But also it's
we're dealing with a lot of chefs now who grew up on Wu-Tang, and so they want you to know that they fucking grew up on Wu-Tang, and so like you have to come into their restaurant and it's like all loud, this particular hip hop from my actual era. And I'm just over it. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, literally, I'm paying, $400 for this meal, and I want to actually talk to my friends. And there's also things you have to do to your ceiling if you want to have that volume, and people aren't doing that. The acoustics, that it doesn't have to be like one of those Park Avenue like rainbow room with carpet on the walls, but there was carpet on the walls, right? So I love to gather people. I mean, I just feel honored to like sit at a table with some of the folks. And it doesn't have to be fancy. Like I see that gathering. It's like you invite the New York Times over and all your little high name friends. And I've definitely had those kinds of cookout. You had Khalees in my kitchen in Santa Monica, like whipping up one day, throwing out lamb chops, all kinds of, folks.
See, we came back to that lamb chop. She was like, it's time for the lamb chops.
I did. Yeah. Y'all. Anyway, I'm not even, yeah. But I mean, y'all were doing this too. I mean, Ghetto Gastro, you can find Ghetto Gastro now in Williams-Sonoma, in Target, on billboards, on the Gap ad right there on Houston. But, what you started at, how did you start? I mean, I know that you were doing like supper kind of clubs, right? Up in the Bronx and in the city.
It really started as like parties at my crib to meet women. Yeah. No, I'm just joking, but not. But yeah, it was really like just looking at culture, right? And I was tired of. It's funny that we go back to hip hop and restaurants, right? I was going to fancy restaurants, spinning the room, looking around. You hear Nas, Illmatic on a system, but when I look at the room, no people of color. When I look in the kitchen, maybe a dishwasher or a busboy has some melanin, but other than that, it's quiet. So I was like, I happened to grow up, two of my close friends, my boy Lester, we grew up together in the same neighborhood. He had just one Chopped. I was like working in fashion and I was kind of observing the art world from afar. And I was like, I think there's room for an expression that's very of the Bronx, of culture, capital C culture, where we could kind of do something interesting and use food as a medium to say what we want to say and work in a lane where people weren't doing what we were doing to carve out space. So it's really about on a very simple level, kicking it with the homies, thinking about how we could have conversations about liberation and use everybody eats, right? And when you think about things that are stripped and extracted, food and the culture, you always say hip hop's not a culture because it doesn't have food. So I'm like, all right, we got something to say about that. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's kind of what it was about. Just like breaking bread to build bridges. That's like one of those spicy buzz sentences. Dream also gave me, she ghost wrote a couple lines on my TED Talk.
But to have a food experience with Jon is to have it at the very highest level. Like it's not, like when Chef's Table came out, my daughter put me onto it. That first season, she and I were in Tuscany and we were like, let's go to Modena. And, we're not far from, we could go to Bologna, take a train. We could be at Massimo's restaurant. I called Jon. I'm like, do you think you can get us into Massimo's restaurant? Not only, and this is, of course, y'all know who Massimo is. And I not only does Jon get me into Massimo's restaurant in 2 days, Massimo's wife picks us up from the train station with Massimo's son. And this is all from love from Jon, and like, I don't know, comps my daughter's meal. And like, she takes us to the balsamic museum. And it's just like the same thing. We were in Japan. I like to travel the world with this man. When we were in Japan, people were shutting down restaurants to give Jon a Wagyu omakase. So just like being with you and I've never had a Wagyu omakase. Have y'all? It's like, yes, it can have like 9 meals of Wagyu. It was a lot, but it was amazing.
That was for big. Was beef.
So yes, I mean, like
I think that like when you have, and it doesn't have to be fancy. You know, I do crab fried rice or shrimp and grits or whatever, but good meals, like you just remember forever. So there's the care of the preparation of the food, the love and the warmth that goes into that. And then there's everything that happens at the table, which you hope is magic. Yeah.
You had such an eloquent way of wording it when we interviewed you for our book, like was it a love bomb? Or you had a really dope bar, but it was poignant. But yeah, I think like it's a real tool for expression, and it's about like nourishing the body, the soul, and the mind, right? And I think it's on a basic human level, like we all got to do that, right? You know, we gotta sit at the table and break bread and do the damn thing. So, and I really love traveling with you. And like I said, I know if shit gets sticky,
I'm not gonna pull out the ratchet in Japan.
you know, so I just know you ready. Like I know if I do something to somebody, you're not gonna tell. Like it's like we ready. Like. All right, so on that, and I think I'm probably one of the people that could do this to Dream, because she's always discussed like hating that talk about hippity hoppity hip hop and all that. So, but
my favorite new MC is in the room right now.
You want to say who it is?
Errol Holden. So I got his music off of Apple, I got his music because Bar, the good friend that we were talking about, put me on to him. And when Bar sent it to me, he was like, yo, you gotta listen to my man. I'm like, I'm not listening to any fucking rap. Don't even text me this shit. Like, why? Like, literally sat unread, like, did not press the link for like 3 days. And I'm stuck in traffic in LA. And then I like played it. I should have trusted Bar, but I was just mad that he was even sending me hip hop. And I was like, oh my God, like, this is if Jay had Doom's flow, like, you know? Which is what I told Jay. And Jay was like, of course you like him. You like Rock Marciano. I was like, no, keep listening. It's like more than that, you know? But yes, I don't in general. Like, I haven't listened to hip hop in forever. I haven't listened to Jay's last 3 albums. I never listened to a Kanye album. Sorry. One of the directors of Genius is in the house. I'm going to get to Watch the Throne one day. Jack White keeps coming out with records, so I keep forgetting. But yes.
So yeah, like the next project, it was all a dream. Like when you're not doing Black August or getting Stop and Frisk 86th.
That's
like
MXG.
What else were you, or working with them? What else were you doing with that 12 to 14 pound camera, you know, when outside of NYU?
Well, I'll let you have a preview of it, and we're gonna show that clip next, but and then kind of wrap it up. But yeah, so you know, archives, right? So my daughter and I were sharing a storage space, and my good friend Amir Lewis, who is here, I think, and we were moving her stuff from out of the storage space to Los Angeles. And I came across these 2 boxes of tapes that have literally this was last year, so it was like the 50th anniversary, and I was just like, just end this year. I couldn't take that. So I'd been ignoring all the 50th, whatever the heck. I'm like, if y'all ain't talking about Bambaataa and Russell and all these predators, then what are we talking about, right? Yeah, I guess that's a thank you. It's awful, right? It should be a part of the conversation. Anyway, these 2 boxes of VHS tapes, beta, 3/4-inch tapes. So I knew, you know, what had happened. What had happened was I had a documentary class. I wish Stephanie Black were here. She did Life in Debt, this amazing film about Jamaica and the economy there. And I remember her, I would think of her because she came to visit my documentary class. Jim, I can't remember the professor's last name. And I wasn't, you know, I want to do narrative. I got into documentary because of my activism. I'm still right now trying to, you know, shoot my first. I was worried when I was getting honored, like, am I getting put out to pasture? Like, I still got work to do, you know? But anyway, so I had a documentary class. This is 1993. I wasn't working at the Source anymore. My good friend Kierna Mayo was still there. She would be leaving shortly after. But I said, I had a 45-minute project due. I said, oh, I'll go and shoot a documentary at the Source magazine where I worked for 18 months when I was 20. They kept kicking me out of the room. And I was like, this is not how a documentary works, guys. Clearly, you haven't seen Frederick Weissman. Like, I just need to keep the cameras running. And so I was like, yo, Biggie was my neighbor. Again, I couldn't afford NYU's dorms. I landed in Brooklyn on Cambridge Place between Gates and Green, which was right around the corner from Biggie, who lived on St. James between Fulton and Gates, and we were friends. He wasn't out. He had maybe done the Mary J remix for Real Love, but I don't even think Party and Bullshit was out. And I was like, yo, I'm gonna get an F. Like, these cats keep kicking me out of the room. And he was like, yo, Ma, just come shoot me then. And so I started shooting big. And back then I thought I was making a documentary called And It Don't Stop. I ended up licensing that footage to VH1 for Behind the Music, Notorious B.I.G. So I knew I had that footage, that was in there, you know. I shot Biggie from 93 to 95. But I knew I'd shot Snoop. I had gone out while he was working on Doggy Style. My good friend Sheena Lester, or either Matt McDaniel. Oh no, you know what it was? The first issue of Vibe, which had Tretch on the cover, I wrote a small piece on the Lady of Rage, and me and Rage became friends. And Rage invited me to the studio, and at the time I was shooting, so I was like, you know, I shot Snoop, and then they were all working in the studio. But when I was looking through this box of tapes, I was like, Keith, like, when did I shoot Guru? You know, from Gangstar. He lived around the corner also on Washington. I used to have a Caesar. He used to give me cuts. He used to cut my hair. He lived in Branford Marcellus' old brownstone. What else did I have in there? Eric Sermon. I was like, I forgot what I had. And so I sent it to my editor, Amir, and I was like, this is all last summer, June. And I was like, yo, I'm gonna send you this footage. I want you to start looking at it and tell me if we can make a short out of this. And when we started going through the footage and unpacking what we had, we realized that we had a feature. And so, yeah, it was all a dream. It's my personal archives. I'm very much in the footage, you know. It hasn't been announced where it's going to premiere, but it'll premiere at a festival in June. And yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, what was the question? Thanks.
I think you covered a lot. I don't even remember what the question was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're super excited, and selfishly, I've been as a friend trying to get Dream to talk more about her stories that like she shares in private, that she's probably bored with. But I think like world, and it's going to be just of such great service to the world to see these like tender moments and like the before it all happened. You know, I think people always like to see how the sausage gets made and like how people interact and build and what have you. So shout out to Dream for, you know, putting this together, and Nina for sharing that storage space.
And to Daryl Phillips, who's in the audience, a longtime collaborator of mine, and he helped me. Yeah, he was a filmmaker himself, edited Treasure for me, worked on Black August, and yeah, David Feinberg is the editor on this project, an LA editor who my friend Wildflower introduced me to. But yeah, this has been a real organic thing. In general, I'm not very nostalgic. I don't know how y'all feel about looking back, but I'm always trying to look forward. I like to be in the present. I think when I think of things that I love about myself, I really love that I am in the present. Like I'm not someone who's going around telling old stories about the 90s and like, you know, like I'm checking for cats who are doing work now, and I'm loving this moment, right? But it was cool to sit in some of those memories for a moment.
I have a question too, though, like, because I think you have a unique skill that it's like, how do you know, like, what's your litmus test to know that you're in the midst of something special and great? Like, because I feel like You recognized it with Big. You connected Biggie and Tupac, if I'm not mistaken, right? You introduced them. Like, you saw it with Jay, like the way you wrote the review of Reasonable Doubt when it was nobody was really checking for it like that.
No.
Right.
They said it had to be I wrote a review in the Village Voice called Ice Ice Baby, and it was a double review of Nas's It Was Written, his second album, and Jay's debut. And the reason was because the Village Voice was like, Jay isn't big enough for his own review. Everyone was like talking about Mace. I'm like, have y'all heard Reasonable Doubt? Like, and it was like Puffin Mace and friggin' silver suits or whatever the fuck. I was like,
everybody know I got more bounce to the end.
I know that's Kanye's favorite. Whatever. I mean, shout out to Uptown, whatever.
But yeah, what is it though? Like to like because also with like people today, like I remember we were working on a Nowness film. You're like, oh, you got to know Jin and Kuru, right? And this is before the shows and the fanfare. So it's like, I think it spans mediums or Flowers of Vietnam, the restaurant in Detroit, right? Like, how do you, like what is it?
Flowers of Vietnam is the Vietnamese restaurant in Detroit's Mexican Village neighborhood owned by my Palestinian friend, George Azar.
He's a chef, he's a Palestinian chef, and he rocks Cartier glasses. So you know he's from Detroit for real.
Detroit. The Buffs. Yeah.
Buffs.
I don't want to like, I think we all do that. Like we all are out here
It's levels to this shit though. Like I know you're trying to be modest or whatever, but like.
Well, you put me onto Jen Packer, you know what I'm saying? I just think that I think the only sin that you can have is to not be curious. You know what I'm saying? And I guess I am one of those people who's like, you gotta, like Jason England is in the house and he wrote this incredible thing during the 50th of hip hop, but I'd missed that because I wasn't reading none of that stuff, right? But he just wrote this piece about American fiction, and it was around the time that Critical Minded was happening, that gathering at Columbia, and Critical Minded was founded one of the founders, again, Elizabeth Mendez Berry, because there's a dearth of arts criticism happening, and you can't, art can't grow if there's not real arts criticism happening. You know what I'm saying? Jackson Pollock, he exists, but he exists in relationship to Clement Greenberg. He exists, Jay Hoberman, is like shaping certain New York filmmakers, just all of, like that is a big part of it. Like the criticism grows. It's like a real important kind of like love language and intervention, right? And so I think that the only sin is to not, well, there are lots of sins, but one of the greatest sins is to lack curiosity. I love that bumper sticker phrase or whatever. Like if, to be interesting, you have to be interested, So, I think about, you and I connect around like what Rashida's, doing all day, which is the Black visual arts, So like, I just, that to me has been where the most exciting work has been happening for a while, So I'm not the first person to, see Toyin's work when she was a grad student. I mean, she kind of blew when she was still in grad school, right? But like, I do remember, I've been thinking about Bell Hooks and the writing that she was doing around arts criticism, which kind of is undervalued, and how she was writing about Carrie James Marshall. I mean, I remember me and Greg and AJ just being in relationship with these folks when they couldn't necessarily pay their rent, when, AJ was dating Ellen Gallagher, and there were all of these like important Black artists, they were working, but now they are getting their like recognition and due. I know there's still struggles in the art world. I'm not saying it's some fair place, an equitable place, but I remember there was this moment I was in Manhattan. I haven't lived here for 16 years, which is weird because this is one of my home. It's where I lived from 19 to 40. But there was this moment where Kayinde had Rumors of War in Times Square. Wangechi had, who I remember from being at Yale, had the pieces in front of the Met, and Carrie had designed the banners at Lincoln Center for Porgy and Bess. And I was like, wow, like Black artists are occupying the most expensive real estate in Manhattan. Like this is such a moment. This is like so inspiring, And I don't know that we've even reached that with film, like where we are now with music and visual arts. Like I don't know that I mean, Moonlighting comes close to like a Miles record or whatever, but I don't know that we've had our Dirty Mind, you know, in the film world. But I know it's coming. But I don't know if that answers the question. I mean, I care. I just sing it from the rooftops too. Like if I love something, I'm going to be sharing it and just, I want people to be on the good stuff. Like, so yeah.
Well, thank you for being a curious person that likes to share.
You too. Thank you. Okay. I think we're at an hour. Yeah.
Did we show the clip?
Yeah. Let's show the clip, and then and we said we would take a couple of questions. I mean, I feel like I know everyone here, but if y'all, so I can imagine y'all having questions. But
violent tweet questions only.
So yes, we're gonna just show a clip that we worked on. We still have sound work to do on this, but it was all a dream.
From Detroit in 1990 to study film at NYU, and later I joined the staff at The Source magazine. As a music journalist, I learned to be a fan and a critic of some of the greatest artists of a generation. And as a filmmaker, I knew there was something essential happening. Hip-hop was breaking new ground, artistically and commercially, and I kept the cameras rolling.
Fresh. Y'all don't know about that.
Creamy fresh. Fresh, y'all. Get up. Drake. Little C's representing the Junior Mafia.
Hey, what's up, girl?
Don't stop lyrically. Untouchable, uncrushable, getting mad blunted in the 600.
What's the difference between like? I don't know. That's how I feel about it. If a nigga diss me on a record, and when I see him, we gonna deal with it straight up.
The motherfucking dog family.
Little.
What the fuck, man? Get the fuck off that punk smooth shit, man. Okay, are you ready? All right, G-Rap, Live and Let Die. All right, what about Onyx?
Onyx is cool, yeah.
Where did the like slam dancing and shit come from? That wild.
It's all the frustration instead of me going outside and slicing somebody up, getting them a $150 across the face.
What up, son? I heard they got you on the run.
And I was out there doing my thing, selling my motherfucking shit, trying to survive. Niggas come through and be like, yo, this my man right here. This nigga know how to rhyme. Check it out. And I rhyme for anybody at the top. Word up, just for the love of it.
It was all a dream. I used to read that magazine. So pepper, heavy tea, I've never seen. And the pictures on the wall. Every Saturday,
Salome, one of the producers on that film, is here today, and Dream, and so is Bar. Again, Daryl, Josh Begley, Amir Lewis. We worked really hard and quickly, and as you can see, and Jessica Green, who's going to be helping me with this film. Also, it was that footage wasn't in a temperature-controlled space, so there's degradation of it, but that's just going to have to be a part of the experience.
Thank you. Did you want to take questions?
I was just kind of blown away by what I just saw. And
Who are you?
Stand up. Peace, everybody.
This is the co-director of Kanye's Genius. This is
Chike, the homie Chike Oza of Cootie and Chike.
But I mean, we've only seen like 5 minutes, and it's kind of ironic your stance in kind of hip hop now. But I feel like what you're about to show the world is probably the most iconic documentary we'll ever see. You've literally captured the golden era of hip hop from such a vulnerable lens. Like, What are your thoughts around that?
Thank you. I think what you guys did with Kanye was pretty epic too, and I don't even fuck with Kanye. So, yeah. I mean, I hope that. Yeah, we'll see how it's received. Everyone seems pretty on board with it too. I'm in the phase now of having to reach out to people and be like, "Yo, do you remember I shot you on the Staten Island Ferry in 1993?" Like, I'm gonna put that out this year. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. This is the second pass at this. We're working on it right now. It's not quite wrapped. We'll wrap in a couple of weeks. And the note that I kept getting was to put more of myself in it. And so I realized that It Was All a Dream is not about me or even the Biggie title. It's about the kind of that hazy kind of golden light that we have associated with memory and that we sometimes project onto that era. But yeah, it was before we were on the break of like hyper capitalism, just kind of ruining everything, Maybe that was personified by Puff. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like I literally just fanned out for a second.
All right. Well, I'm glad I could impress you because you did such a good job with Genius.
Thank you.
Hi, you're so pretty. So having met you and known you for a while, not as much as all these folks, but a while.
This is Jova Lynn, what was your co-director at Museum of Contemporary Art in Detroit, where I'm a board member. Yes, Jova.
So I think about, I Am Ali, I think about Treasure, I think about Surviving R. Kelly, I think about Freshwater and all. Now, It Was All a Dream and this sort of role that radical honesty and vulnerability play in your practice. And something that I don't know that we've ever talked about is your practice being that of a storyteller that encompasses the writing, that encompasses these films, that encompasses the way you sort of gather us in rooms and make us talk. And I'm wondering if you could just sort of, because it's a vulnerability that I think is very sacred, that you don't give to everybody necessarily, but it's on your shoulder. It's how you walk, it's how you move in this world. And so if you could tell a little bit, just because we're in this room and I want to hear you say it, a little bit more about what it means for you to be a storyteller as you move through this world.
Yeah, thank you. In Detroit, I have a 8-foot table in a very small apartment, and Jova has been over for many dinners. I remember when Carrie Mae Weems came through, I was like, come on over. In Octavia Butler's Wild Seed, Anianu, who of course is a shapeshifter, is hundreds of years old, and partly because she's hundreds of years old, she is the de facto griot, right? So, and we all know that the tradition and the history of the griot is that you get buried outside of the village, you're not necessarily invited to the wedding because you was there for the last 2 weddings from so it's not like, I guess I tell stories because I can, and I think that's a blessing. Like it's not something I've been practicing in terms of writing. In fact, as I work on this scripted stuff, I am having to do what Greg Tate said, which is write with your ass, like sit down and write. And that's been hard for me because it's a muscle that if you don't exercise, you kind of lose it. But I have been, practicing what I've always wanted to do, which is as a filmmaker. I don't think there's another choice rather than radical honesty, but that doesn't mean that I tell it all. I do. For instance, like when Biggie died, and I'm feeling this way about Greg also, you end up telling a couple of stories over and over again, and then memory, it's just like sometimes when you have a photograph of yourself as a child, you're like, do I remember the actual birthday party or that moment on the giant slide in Belle Isle, or do I just remember the photograph? And that's what I'm trying to deal with in Freshwater is this idea of memory and what's real and what's not real, and how we remember and what we share. And so I remember at a certain time, particularly on Twitter, like March 9th is coming up. It's the anniversary of Biggie's death, which we don't celebrate, but we mark because it was such a huge loss. And I remember I used to share stories on Twitter, and then I just stopped because I was not only telling the same stories, but I realized that I wanted to keep things for myself, because as the years pass, as you have distance from it, you're losing it. I just sat down with his son for the first time. I never met his son. Barr, again, helped make that happen. He came and screened this film, and he was really into it. And so I wasn't there when he screened it, but we had lunch in LA a couple of days ago. And the way he laughed, the way he did this thing with his sinuses, it was all Biggie. And I was like, oh my God, like, wow. Like I had forgot certain things about Big because it's been so long, right? So, radical honesty, again, there's a Black feminist tradition that I hope to one day, be a part of, like in that canon or whatever. Okay, thank you. And so, they taught us, Paula Marshall taught us, Audre Lorde taught us, June Jordan taught us, and I'm so lucky to have grown up in the 80s, like back when novels were still being published, before the publishing industry gave us all memoirs and freaking self-help books. Somehow we lost that, and so, those radical truth tellers are absolutely, even when we were doing Surviving R. Kelly, people would talk about, that kind of work and what it is. Because particularly when you're doing Black feminist work, when you're calling out like people in your own community, it can be incredibly isolating, and I understand why people don't want to do it, right? But I'm not the first to have done it, I'm not saying that they didn't pay a price. I remember tweeting about Ntozake Shange, and the kind of blowback that Ishmael Reed and other people threw her way for Color Girls hit Broadway. Ishmael Reed, again, obsessed with Alice Walker when The Color Purple came out, like a whole campaign against her. I mean, he must have spent 2 decades like going after Alice Walker, right? Now, of course, Surviving R. Kelly is on no level with Color Purple or for Color Girls, but I wasn't like the first to receive that blowback. I think about Joan Morgan writing about Ice Cube and Mike Tyson, in The Village Voice, attending that trial. I think about Kierna Mayo, making Akinelli lose his record deal when he put it in her mouth, and she wrote about it. So, it's just work that needs to be done, but it's not the only work either, and I don't know that I'm that I have a deep, like a real radical honesty say around my own intimate and interior life, I kind of hold some of that for myself,
You want to do one more if you can? Okay.
Awesome. He said we could take one more, sure. I mean, they said, I'm sorry. Here. Hey, Amir and Denise.
Hi, my name is Nicole. My question is, you talked about legacy earlier, and so just generally, like, of the work that you've already done, the work you have yet to do, what do you want your legacy to be?
And this isn't like a false modesty. I don't know that, maybe there's a way to be intentional about that. You know what I'm saying? It's what I was saying about Pac, it's like, it's kind of, I have an idea what I want my funeral to be like. You know what I mean? I want sushi, I have a playlist, you know what I mean? I'm not one of those people who wants like a celebration. Like I want people to be passed out crying, like they can't go on. Y'all can do a second line later, but I want people to be trying to crawl in the casket with me. But legacy, I don't know. I'll think about it in a couple years. I want to have and I've already succeeded at this, raising an amazing human being. I mean, a Hampton. And I mean, obviously that's the most important thing, not to be all Jackie O about it, but it's real, I hope that people, yes, remember kindness and times that we've had. In terms of the legacy keeps building, so if there's a generation that comes after me, Joan and Kierna, they're already birthing other new, in terms of the writing, they're already birthing. And so then the chain of custody even gets lost. I mean, I always talk about citation as a Black feminist praxis because we're so often erased, right? And so we know that we have to do that work of calling names or calling each other's names. So I guess I want my name. That movie Coco makes me cry all the time about the ofrendas. And I'm just I hope somebody invites me into the other side on Dios de la Muerte. But yeah. Thank y'all so much.
Thank
This
you.
room, yeah. Thank you.